Okay traders, what we're going to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through how to set up and start trading with the all-new volume delta indicator inside the Tickblaze platform. Now what's nice about this video is I'm going to talk to you about setting up the software first with the very easy configurable settings, and then I'm going to show you two really powerful trading strategies that you can look to take advantage of immediately following this video. Let's get into it. Now, the first thing you want to do when you load up Tickblaze is you want to go to the chart. And when you right click the menu, you're going to go under the indicators section and you're going to see volume. And inside the volume, you're going to have an indicator called volume delta. Now, we've already populated this under the favorites list because it's something that most traders are going to look to take advantage of. And this is the fastest way to add it to your chart. Now, when you add it to your chart, you're going to load the default settings and you're only going to have one of these loaded on your chart. What I normally like to do is I like to load the indicator on the chart twice because there's two different modes that you can actually use with this volume delta software. Now, once you've added it to the chart, what I'm going to do is I'm going to double click the settings. You're going to see that I also have it here inside the menus list. Now, the first one I'm going to look at, if I click on parameters, is that I have the ability to set it to a cumulative mode. And the cumulative mode allows you to choose whether you want it to start at the beginning of the day, the beginning of the week, the month, or the year. For the purpose of day trading, obviously I'm going to look at it from a daily perspective. And then you can set the colors however you choose based off your preference. Now what's nice about this is since there's actually two modes for trading, what I like to do is I like to save a setting so that way you can actually see the different defaults. So when I'm loading the indicators, I can choose whether I want the cumulative delta, which is what I'm looking at now, or if we want to set the settings up without the cumulative delta, we're going to look at it from an up-down volume perspective. So let me just kind of go in here and I'll show you. This is the cumulative setting, and this is the up-down volume setting. Now the difference has to do with how I'm going to teach you the strategies. And it really is a preference on how you choose to look at the software. A lot of traders don't know the difference between looking at delta from cumulative or from an up-down basics. And essentially when we think about delta, what we're thinking about is the net, right, relationship of buyers versus sellers relative to the net distribution of order flow, right? When a candle has more sellers, you're going to have more sell delta. When the candle has more buyers, you're going to have more buy delta. And that's basically cumulative delta or up-down delta 101, right? And a lot of traders will like to see the delta because it gives you somewhat of an order flow concept without having order flow on your chart. And it's a lot more useful than just loading basic volume, which is very rudimentary and it really doesn't give you an edge, okay? Now what I'm gonna do here is I'm going to go to a couple locations that I've chosen for the purpose of this example, and let's just look at today's trading. Now the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna minimize the lower window. I don't need the up-down delta for this. I'm only gonna look at cumulative delta. And the first strategy that I'm going to teach you is ultimately going to be volume divergence. Now, divergence, I'm going to stick with the first standard divergence for this video, is when prices are making a higher high, and then when you see the delta making a lower high. Why is this important? Because volume always leads price. And what we're going to use this indicator for is we're going to use it as a leading tool, which is much more powerful than, say, using a momentum oscillator. A lot of traders will look at divergence using, say, an RSI or a MACD or a stochastics, right? The problem is that those indicators are based off of your bar's relationship to closing price or the high-low distribution. And volume, on the other hand, is looking at the inner mechanics of the market. And so let's start with the first example here in today's pre-market. And this is very, very important that you zone in. And if you have to pause this video, that's perfectly fine. That's why we're filming it. I'm just going to draw a line on the chart for a second. Okay, we're going to draw a trend line. From this high, okay, here we made a higher high in price, okay? But if you notice from this section in here, we literally made a lower high in the delta. And what's important is that you pay attention to the relationship to the price action at those highs, and then you look at the delta. And I'm going to circle it like this. The key bar here that is the driving factor for the trade is this, what we call the whale delta. And this candle right here is the big tell story that this market is going to drop here, okay? And why is that important? Is because prices went higher and then the sellers stepped in, which was leading here. You can see that the sellers were stepping in before the market had even put in its top. Like the market was dropping and dropping and dropping on the volume, which therefore tells you that it's not just divergence based on momentum, it's divergence based off of the volume. And this is very, very important because what you do, okay, is you take a trade, right? You can literally take a trade on the close of that bar and you can put your stop loss directly above that bar. Okay, you can enter on the close of this bar. You can put your stop loss directly above that bar, and that is an amazing trade setup because you're not just using price action, you're using price action, divergence, and volume to feed that trade signal. Okay, now the same thing happened here earlier today after the open, right? I'm going to look here today, and we're going to take a look at the volume relationship. And what's interesting enough, okay, you can see the same situation happened again. Okay, I'm going to zoom in here so you can see price. We're going to zoom in here and we're going to look at the volume. Okay. Now, I'm going to draw a trend line from the highs. Okay, this was the high and that was the high. Okay, you can see that there. And what you can see here is from this peak, we literally were making, right, lower deltas. Okay, now we're gonna draw, I'm gonna grab my cursor here so you can follow along. We're gonna go to this. I'm gonna draw this trend line just a little bit further because that's exactly where the last bar was. Okay, that was the highest high of the day. And in real time, you wouldn't know that. You'd be looking at it like this and you say, okay, prices are going higher, deltas are going lower, right? Prices are going higher, right? Deltas are going lower. Prices went a little higher, deltas went a little lower. But what I want you to pay attention to is the wicks on these bars. It wasn't until we made this candle right here that the divergence for volume was confirmed. It was the lowest point where price made the first lower low on the night, or on the morning, excuse me, for this. And if you literally were to look at the price action on this delta, it was where the sellers started to step in. Now I'm gonna draw a little zone around here. Okay, just like this. We're gonna draw it on that candle. Okay, and you can literally put your order on the close of this candle if you want to enter as soon as the situation happens, like on the prior trade. You could have put it right above there and you would have had a trade literally on those next two candles. Within 10 minutes, those are 5-minute bars, you would have had an opportunity to take an entry on the close of that candle. As soon as the market made a lower low and the delta confirmed the divergence, that would have been an opportunity for a great short. However, there was also a retest opportunity to come back into the zone that created the delta divergence, and this is called the delta divergence zone. It's a little bit more of an advanced concept. However, the point is that the delta told the story for the morning, which is what called the top of the day. It wasn't the fact that we have a trend or we have a range or we have some other indicator. It had to do with the volume and the relationship to price. Okay, so that's the first strategy that you can take here. I would encourage you to load the cumulative delta on your chart. I'm going to delete the drawings. Okay, and you can go back and you can do it on a 1-minute chart. You can do it on a 5-minute chart. You can do it on a 15-minute chart, whatever you make sense to do. You can do it on other bar types as well because the volume delta indicator works on all bar types except for volume charts because volume is an equal bar. But the point is that you can use this as a great strategy using volume leading price. Now, the second strategy that I'm going to teach you using the volume delta indicator is the different settings. So I'm going to minimize that. Okay, let's make this a little bit bigger here. Okay, just like that. And the second setting is basically when you go into the settings and you turn cumulative off. And when you turn cumulative off, you're going to have up-down volume delta, which is why I have it saved as UDVD. It's just my own savings so that I can ultimately go back and see that. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to go pick a different day and time. Okay, I'm going to go back a couple days here and we're going to start right here. Let's go back and see how many days I got loaded. Yeah, let's start right here. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to start by essentially looking at the delta on the day. And I'm going to just make this just a little bit bigger so we can see this. I really want to zone in on right here, the delta. Now, with regards to this standing out like a sore thumb, the key here is we're going to disregard this because that's an outlier. And what we're going to do is we're going to go back and we're going to look inside of the candles off the open. Now, there's two ways to do this. You're going to look for the biggest level, okay, the biggest level off the open, okay? Why? It's where the most amount of order flow is coming into the market, okay? So you're going to look at, the first morning push, and you're going to look for, the first candle that gives you the biggest delta in the morning. So if we go back and we take a look at these candles, okay, we can go and see that this bar right here had the highest body of delta. And this candle right here had the lowest body of delta. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my cursor. I'm going to identify those bars. This candle right here was this candle right here. So I'm going to draw a zone around that bar. And I'm going to create delta zones. Let's go grab a horizontal zone. And I'm going to just create a zone around that bar. Okay. Now this candle here was the sell volume. Okay. The lowest sell volume, which was right here. I'm going to just draw a zone around this. Why? Because depending on the relationship between the buyers and the sellers, watch what happens when we get right up there, okay? It comes right into the resistance and drops. What the market looks for is the delta that controls the day. And in this situation, you can see, even if you took away the sellers and you looked at just the buyers, look how it just touched the edge of that candle. Now, the reason it stopped here is because that was the candle that had the biggest delta off the open. Even in the morning session, these other deltas could not beat the delta. And we call these delta zones. Now, interesting enough, if you go back here and you take a look at this outlier, okay, this outlier candle right here, this bar right here also had some pretty significant delta. Okay, and we're gonna just draw a little zone around this, the horizontal zone factor. Okay. And when we get back above it or below it and we retest it, look what happens when we get outside of it. Now this opened inside of it, but it's not the point. The point is it acts as support or resistance. Look what happens when we touch the edge of that zone. Now this is the overnight. It's pretty spotty trading, but that's still a 5-minute candle on the S&P, and that it's a pretty significant move, right? The key here is looking for the deltas that give you the biggest bodies on the day, right? And what's unique about this, I'm going to just delete the drawings. Okay, I'm going to delete the drawings. We're going to go back to yesterday's price action. Let's go back to it. We can actually go back to it today as well. We can look to find it. Let's just find it off the open. This is really interesting, okay? If you look off the open push right here, these were the opening, the market, right? The first 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, right? You can see there's the big volume and then everything drops down. Once the market peeks its head in here, you can take a look at this candle, okay? Right there. This was the candle, this little teeny blue bar that peeked its head. So what you do is you draw a little zone around that. And when the market gets above or below it, it is going to become support or resistance. Well, clearly the market ripped above it. And once the market leaves, if it comes back to test that delta, you're going to get an amazing trade. If we get below it, came real close, didn't it? Didn't get there, but that's not the point. Point is the trade was in the morning, okay? Now let's go back and take a look at the prior day. Right here. Now off the open, okay? Off the open here, you see all this big volume that came in off the open right here. We didn't have a lot of buyers coming in off the open. We had a whole lot of sellers, but you can see that that was the big sell candle right here. This one right here. So I'm going to draw a little zone around it. Just like this. Now by default, this should be a pretty good support or resistance level. And it came back in here and it reacted out of here. fairly decent. It got stuck in there a little bit, but it did give a little bit of a reaction, okay? And when we close back out of it, watch what happens. The market comes back in to test the same area, right? And get a huge reaction out of that level, okay? Now you're gonna notice that there was also another zone. Let's go take a look. The biggest delta on the day, and this is where you can use the open or you can use the day. Some traders like to take it off the open because it peaks its head on the day. Some traders will look at the biggest bar of the day, whether it's a buy or a sell zone, it doesn't matter. This is clearly the biggest bar of the day. It had the biggest body. It also had the biggest wick, right? And you can ultimately take a look. If I just draw a little zone around that, watch what happens. You're gonna start to see some magic here when we actually draw a little zone around that. Okay, that was the candle like that. You can see it right there. Okay, now watch what happens when we get down to test that. Right there, to the tick. Right, call that to the tick. Then when the market comes back down to test it, literally just miss it by a tick, right? And then it blew through it, right? Because it's already been tested. You can see here that the market will often always come back to test the delta zone. Why? Because the market peaked its head. Like, you got to remember, there's a lot of orders that are coming into these bars. What's going on those candles, right? That's what's important. And my suggestion for you with this video is to understand how to take something that is free for you. I'm giving you free education in this training video. You can take volume divergence, okay, with cumulative delta, or you can take volume zones with up-down delta, and you can have literally two powerful strategies using intra-bar volume without even having to spend any money, right? It's free for you inside of the platform. You can right-click, you can go inside of this indicator settings and click on volume delta, and you can literally start trading using this software tomorrow. Now, if you have any questions on this video, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna post this in the community as well for you guys to watch. We're gonna post this on the YouTube channel. And if you have any questions, my team will be more than happy to help you with the software. So take care, traders, and happy trading.